So who wants to learn how to frontside flip? Or is it more, who wouldn't want a frontside flip? I've wanted to get this trick ever since I saw Mike Carroll doing them in virtual reality, and I worked long and hard to be able to work them out. I think it's pretty important to have a solid kickflip and a solid frontside 180 before you do this, just so you have both those motions down. The first thing I'm going to show you is the foot positioning, and I'm going to have to do that sitting down because it's actually really hard to try and stand still on a board and keep your feet in the position they're supposed to be in. Frontside flip foot positioning can really vary depending on who's doing it. I mean, you watch Jeremy Ray's and his are up here like he's about to heel flip. I like to have mine a couple inches back from the bolts, angled a little bit this way, in preparation to slide off the board that way. My back foot is placed actually kind of on the edge of the board. So I'm actually putting a lot of pressure right here with the ball of my foot in preparation to scoop this way. The two combined motions is a scooping motion like this, and a kick flipping motion like that, where you're creating a little gap for your board to go through your legs a tiny bit. So unlike a regular kickflip where you catch your kickflip with your back foot first, when I catch my frontside flips, I really focus on catching it with my front foot and landing on the nose to complete it with a pivot. So here's a little tip that may or may not prove useful to you, but this is what my frontside flips looked like when I first started learning them. Back in the early 90s, when I was about 12 years old, I had a really hard time getting that whole board around. And I basically cheated my way into a frontside flip by slowly getting my kickflip pivots to a point where I started to eventually have a pretty acceptable frontside flip. But it took a long time for that to happen. Anyways, if you're really struggling to try and get that, why not try a few kickflip pivots? You might eventually be able to work your way around. So let's quickly get into form, because there's about 3 ways to do a proper frontside flip. One is the one I'm demonstrating, which is where you do kind of like a 90 or like 120 degree kickflip and you pivot it around the rest of the way. That's a pretty standard and acceptable frontside flip. The next is more like my switch ones here, which I'm not going to do today, so here's another clip of one. So as you can see, that one goes slightly through the legs and I land it full 180. The other one is where you do like a frontside 180 kickflip. The whole thing is pretty standard kickflip. It's 180ing the whole way and you land both wheels down. And that's kind of how Reynolds does them. That's why he's the boss. He's got a mean frontside flip. Now, the last way, which is not in the acceptable category, is the illusion flip, or also known as the Muska flip. And these were really popular in the mid and early 90s. And I was still short at that time and I was dying to learn one because it was a through the legs frontside flip and it was like a serious credit card popsicle stick action for me. Anyways, not to go on at length, but form is important for frontside flips. Now let's go over it again really quickly. I basically do a real scooping kickflip. I try and get my foot out of the way and then I catch it with my front foot, land and complete the turn. If you're little or learning them, doing them off a curb or a 2-stair can really help because it gives you that extra time to pull it all the way around. When I was a little kid, I frontside flipped a pretty decent set of stairs well before I could actually do a proper one on flat consistently. Anyways, thanks for watching and a happy frontside flip to you.